Hi, and welcome to our show. My name is Curtis Brooks, and we are talking about distractions. Are you distracted? This is entrepreneurship episode number 16. Wow, number 16. Wow. Consistency definitely does pay off. And so, again, we are talking about are you distracted? Subtitle Circles of Influence. So, we're going to talk about three things that influence us and ultimately that can be distractions. That being said, our first one is, again, I'm kind of distracted, but nevertheless, kind of getting to a late start here, a little rushing, but nevertheless, our first distraction is social media. Not necessarily just in a sense of be it Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, but social media in a sense that the news, the things that are happening social, those things are a distraction. And I know that many times we give them credence in all of our lives, and to some degree, they mean something to us. They stand for something to us, and at least in our minds. But is it possible that they, in fact, are a distraction? Distractions come in many different shapes and sizes. And one of the things that I notice about distractions is that distractions come really at the very moment that you set forth your intentions on making progress in whatever arena, whatever, be it your career, it could be anything. Okay, I've got to pick the kids up, and all of a sudden the phone is ringing off the hook, and there's this, and there's this, and there's that. So this show is about distractions. Are you distracted? Again, circles of influence. We're talking about distractions really based on a wonderful book, and I encourage each of you to check it out at your leisure. But the book is entitled Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. It is an absolutely powerful book. It's a book on leadership and how many of us need leadership in our lives, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're a parent, whether you are a business or you have your own business, it doesn't matter. How many of us need leadership? And so distractions come to distract us. They come to get us off course. But again, as I mentioned earlier, how many of us have sat on a course, if you will, purposely to go in one direction, and all of a sudden there is the phone ringing, there's the kids are in need of something, the husband is in need of something, the wife is in need of something, the business colleagues or associates are calling, there's an issue, and it comes for a reason, that is to distract us. And some of us could challenge that and say, well, that may or may not be, Curtis, but I want to challenge you to think about the next time that you set out in a position, if you will, if you target an opportunity and say, this is what I want to go for. How many of you had distractions in school? Look at how challenging that may have been. Look how much easier it could have been without the challenges. But in fact, I want to again challenge you to take a look at it. Because if it wasn't for those distractions, it would be yet other distractions. It could be the car situation. In talking with a friend on yesterday, she is a pilot, and she was telling me of a story how when she was trying to get her certificates or get her hours to fly, to get certified and at different levels of her pilot training, that she found herself riding on the back of a motorcycle to get to work or to get to her training. And not that that's so bad, but she had car issues. She had car problems. And in the midst of all that she was trying to do, she had car problems. And if it wasn't for the car problems, it'd be yet another distraction. So sometimes we're hoping that the distractions will go away. But rest assured, distractions are there for a reason. And I'll tell you that in just a few moments. We're going to be taking a short break here in just a few moments here. But nevertheless, distractions are our friend. And in most cases, we think, oh, it's just another situation or more of it. And the truth of the matter is that distractions are your friend. They come for a huge purpose, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment here. All right, we are back here. Again, we're talking about, are you distracted? My name is Curtis Brooks, and this is Entrepreneurship, episode number 16. Are you distracted? Circles of influence. We've been talking about, again, being distracted, your circles of influence. I'm trying to pull this up here in case I've got any viewers here. Nevertheless, we're talking about your circles of influence. Your first circle of influence is social and social media. There are many issues that will spring up in life for whatever reason. And our circle of influence can be those social issues. Our circle of influence can be those social media platforms such as Facebook, such as YouTube. And again, obviously there's so many out there and I don't know them all, but nevertheless, they can in fact be distractions. They can influence us in a way that we are going in one direction, going yet in another direction, and essentially just all over the place and not being very effective. We're going to talk about a couple more distractions or circles of influence. Again, we're talking about essentially, we're talking about Stephen R. Covey's book entitled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he begins his book with circles of influence and also circles of concern. And we're going to touch bases not on circles of concern on today, but we're talking about circles of influence on today. And I've mentioned one circle of influence that is social and social media. The cares of this world, essentially. And if I could borrow a scripture from the Bible, it talks about the parable of the sower, seed that has been sown. And one of the descriptions as God or Jesus was talking about a parable, again, the seed being the word, that information was given to these individuals. Much as information is given to us each day and throughout the course of our day, and in regards to the purpose for which we are going or direction in which we're headed. That information is given to us. But again, back to the scriptures, as Jesus was sowing the seed, giving the information, he talked about an individual where, because the seed was sown, after the seed was sown, he talked about an individual not being able to receive the information because of the cares of the world. And again, the social things that really are out of our control. And we can give to those different platforms or, care for children who are hungry and different platforms out there, social issues that are obviously what we're dealing with here in this world. But we can also care for them so much that to the point where they are causing a distraction. We have to remember that we are on a mission. As entrepreneurs, as parents, as a business owner, CEO, it doesn't matter. We are on a mission. And there are just some things in life that are just absolutely out of our control. And we're calling those circles of influence. Again, circles of influence being social media, the cares of this world. I'll give you an example from the Bible, the Holy Bible. That is that when the seed was sown, when Jesus was sharing information with his followers, the information was sown or people received it in different ways. One received it with joy And after the trials of life had come, and they will come for all of us, the information was lost. That information was essentially void in their lives. And then yet, the person that I mentioned moments ago was where the seed was sown. The information, they received it. But due to the cares of the world, the social issues, the social media that we're all dealing with. And some people could say that I'm not necessarily distracted, Curtis. But the reality of it is that for someone who would say that, I'm essentially afraid of someone that would say that, because the reality of it is that we're all, I guess, in a situation where we can be distracted very easily. Very easily. And we can be distracted to the point where it gets us off course. Meaning that we have the information, we know what we should be doing, but yet we, in fact, are off course. Depending upon, again, basing our information, or at least being distracted from social issues that really, again, are not just out of our control, essentially. Again, circles of influence. That's what we're talking about. Stephen R. Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Secondly, the word familiar. How many of you know that the word familiar, from that word, we get the word family? And it's not to shed a negative light on it, but there are things that we deal with in our own families that are a distraction. Some courses that we've laid out for our family, or at least the map that we have for our family, are daily routines. Those things that we have set up in our own household. This is how things are at my household. This is how things are at my household. And yet someone else has a different routine. But those routines can be distractions. Again, from the word familiar, we get family. And a lot of times we're dealing with the routines that our family has had for years. Again, repeating that routine, in the very sense of the word, it's routine, and it's being repeated. And now you're deciding, hey, I want to start my own business. I want to go to school. And it's through those routines that keep us distracted, in a sense. That you've got the children calling, you've got this going on, you've got the husband, an issue with the husband, you have an issue with the wife, you have an issue on the job, you've got the phone ringing in the midst of you trying to get from point A to point B. You have set your plan, you have positioned yourself to move forward, and to whatever degree, to whatever level, you've positioned yourself. And now you've got these distractions. There, in fact, is a remedy for that. And we're going to get into that in just a few moments. Again, there is absolutely a remedy for that. And I'll share a few tips that I have as to remedy or minimize some of the distractions that we have allowed, not knowingly in most cases, but we've allowed those distractions to be a part of our lives, to the point where they are just, again, we are ever so familiar with them, but until we decide to pull them out, if you will, and say, you know what, that is a distraction. It's a matter of making up our minds and figuring out where exactly we're trying to go. Where exactly have you decided that you need to be? I need to be here at this juncture in my life right now. I need to be at this place in my life. I want to start my own business. I want to go to school. It's a matter of minimizing the circles of influence. And again, circles of influence, let's kind of clear this up. Circles of influence can be absolutely twofold, if you will. Meaning that there's a negative circles of influence, and then there's a positive circle of influence. Either one, or either way, I should say, we can be pulled in many different directions, even if it is positive. Have you ever heard of a good stress? Think about it. There's a good stress, and meaning that you've got a promotion, but yet even with the promotion, there's stress because you've moved up to a new level in your job. You've taken on new clients, if you will, if you're an entrepreneur. So there is a sense of, I don't know if the right word is even good stress. It's just stress. So can good news be great? Absolutely. But it can also be stressful as well. Because with good news comes increase, and with increase comes, in some ways or a lot of ways, being pulled in different directions. Because each client will have their different needs. So it's a matter of knowing what we're going to allow into that circle to influence us purposely. Last week I talked about intention and how powerful it is to know your intention. Set your intention. When you set your intention, you will set your direction. We're going to be taking a break in just a few moments here. Again, we're talking about, are you distracted? The circle of influence, your circles of influence, knowing what they are, social and social media. We've been talking about family. We're going to wrap that up here right after our break here. Again, we're talking about family, and from the word family, we get the word familiar. All right, guys, we are back again. My name is Curtis Brooks, and this is Entrepreneurship episode number 16. Thanks for tuning in. We're talking about, are you distracted? Circles of influence. One of the ways I will, again, minimize my distractions, me personally, and I want to encourage you to do the same. And obviously, we're all going to do something different, but I write little sticky notes. I have little sticky notes throughout my studio / office to remind me of my purpose. That's one way how I minimize my distractions. Another way how I minimize my distractions is I will turn the phone off. The phone is not permitted to ring. If it does ring, I don't know about it. That's because it's off. So there are a couple, again, there are going to be several different ways you can minimize the distractions in your own life. One of the ways, if you have children, you have a spouse. Another way would be to let those individuals, your family, know that, hey, during this time, dad's going to be working on XYZ from 1 to 2. It doesn't mean that there can be absolutely no distractions because life happens. But it does mean that as you are setting those guidelines as far as what is a distraction, you can say to your spouse, hey, I'm working on XYZ. I'll be in my office, in my studio from 12 to 2, working on, again, XYZ. And so unless there is an emergency, contact me, obviously, if there's an emergency. But if it's not an emergency, and you may even want to go as far as giving them certain things that constitute as an emergency. And obviously an emergency to one person will be different to another person. So you may want to give them some suggestions as to what is an emergency and what is not an emergency. Again, it's going to be important to clarify that. Again, I've listed 3 ways of how you can minimize the distractions and stay focused, knowing that you have the information and what you need to do with that information and what course you will need to take with that information. Recognizing our circles of influence that, again, as soon as we will put the stake in the ground, if you will, begin to set course on our journey, know and know again that there are going to be distractions. And believe it or not, distractions are not so that you can't succeed. It's not put in a way that people are doing it intentionally, but it's purpose so that you reach your goal. Believe it or not, folks, they're called forces of the unknown. And don't necessarily want to really get into that space, but there are forces within this very earth that we're operating in that are set out with intentions to be a distraction. And unless we recognize that, unless we recognize those distractions and be able to name those things, to be honest with ourselves and say, I'm distracted by social issues. And if that is something that you are dealing with, being distracted by social issues, spend less time watching TV. If it's something that you are distracted as far as social media, spend less time on social media. Because essentially social media is social in every sense of the word, because a lot of the content that we may see on television is shown on Facebook or YouTube or different videos, Instagram, so on all different kinds of platforms. But here's the thing. It's going to take discipline. You have to be honest with yourself. That includes me too. I too am distracted from time to time. But it's about being honest with ourselves and recognizing that this item here is causing me a distraction. It's aiding in me losing focus. So I have to exercise my right, the power that we all have, to say yes, to say no to a certain situation. Decision to take a position. A decision to say, okay, I accept that. That is the power that you and I have. And we also have the power to exercise it by saying, I know where my weakness is at. We all have them. We all have that Achilles heel, if you will. That being said, I need to turn the television off. Your distraction may not be the television. Your distraction may be social media. Your distraction may be games, if you will. Playing games on your devices, if you will. Your tablet or your phone. Your distraction may be the telephone. But we all have them. We all have them. And here's another piece of small trivia. Not so exciting, but yet when you understand the power of words, meaning that the word entertainment in itself, if you have an opportunity, look it up. It means distraction. Are there good distractions? Absolutely. There are those distractions I guess we deem as good. They make us feel good. They entertain us. They keep us distracted in the sense of keeping our attention. That's what distractions do. They have your attention focused elsewhere. But we have to know, or at least come to a place to say, I've had enough of being entertained. I have enough of being purposely, or at least allow myself to be distracted. And it comes to a place where we have to willfully know that what we're going to permit in our lives. And that if I'm going to be distracted in a sense of the word entertainment, if I'm going to be entertained, I'm going to be entertained on that which is building me up, which is growing me mentally, physically, and emotionally, like working out, reading books that will empower you emotionally, serving others. That's one way that we can, again, minimize the distractions and at the same time building up our bodies as far as that physical exercise, reading books that encourage us, that empower us. That's one way of, again, exercising our right to purposely and willfully allow those things that we want in our lives. So if I'm going to be entertained, I'm going to be entertained by the things that I want. And begin to, again, name those things in my life and in your life. Being honest with ourselves and say, hey, this is an area that is a distraction for me. And so I've got to say, hey, point it out. Again, exercising my right to say no. I know how I feel. I know what goes on when I'm distracted. Pay attention to those signs. Because rest assured, each time that we are distracted, those same feelings come upon us. And we find ourselves again being spread too thin, if you will. Over here and over here. And I guess the term of multitasking comes into play. But I personally, I don't necessarily believe in that. Do I multitask, or at least try to? Of course I do. But I don't necessarily pride myself on multitasking because, in truth, we can't be in all places. We can only be in one place at a time. And so it's important to know that part of dressing the distractions up that we have in life or that will play a role in our lives is giving it a new name. Oh, I'm multitasking. But are we truly being effective? Again, we're talking about, are you distracted? Circles of influence. We've talked about social and social media. We're going to be taking a break in just a few moments here, so I'm just doing a recap. And we talked about family. Again, from the word family, we get the word familiar. Those things that we are familiar with. And lastly, before we go into our break here, we're going to talk about some of the personal things that we are dealing with that are a distraction. We're going to dive into that in just a few moments. All right, we are back and we're talking about, are you distracted? My name is Curtis Brooks and this is Entrepreneurship episode number 16. Are you distracted? Circles of influence. Once again, thus far we've talked about social media, the two things that cause distraction to the point where the information that has been given, the information that we know. I spoke of a scripture from the Bible that where Jesus was speaking to his followers. He spoke in parables and he spoke or gave information which he acknowledged was the seed. He says the word is like a seed, like a farmer sowing seed. And for the one person, the seed was sown, meaning that the person received the information, knowing exactly what they need to do now. But due to social issues, they cause a distraction. And the information that which was sown into their hearts prepared to take root and change the course of their life. But because of the social issues, which were there to cause a distraction, or at least the person gave those social issues permission to cause a distraction, be a distraction in their lives, the individual voided the information that was given to them. So the information which they knew to go, or the direction in which they knew to go, they knew how to respond to the information. Yet, due to the distractions of life, the social issues of life, it essentially voided the information that was given to them Doesn't necessarily obviously mean that the information is forever lost, but sometimes it takes a while to get back on course. So again, we're talking about, are you distracted? Circles of influence, social media, familiar, family, those things are familiar to us. Family plays a huge part of it. As we are wrapping it up here, we've been on for a little bit here. The last one is personal. Sometimes it's our stuff that's in the way. And I want to say a lot of times it's our stuff that's in the way. And I think that a lot of times there are so many distractions to the point where we don't know where the distraction is coming from. To the point where, yes, there are social and social media distractions. There are families distractions, things that we're obviously familiar with or people we're familiar with. But I think sometimes that those things are so big in our lives, we make those issues about them being just being who they are. And oh, that's my family, it's my son, he's calling, and my daughter's calling, I got this going on, all these different things. We have given them so much credence in our lives to the point where they are bigger than us, and we essentially don't know who we are, because those things are such a huge distraction. And yet, as we begin to minimize those distractions in our lives, for instance, turning off the internet or something, if you are reading one of your favorite books or book you just purchased, you want to find out about something, you want to learn something, turn the television off. How often when we do things like that, where it's that we focus on a book, we're turning the television off, and yet we're battling our own thoughts. And that's just my point there, is that when we minimize the distractions from the outside, things that we can clearly control, but yet we sometimes say we can't control them. Turning the television off. Turning the social media platforms off on our phone or something. Turning your phone off. Sharing with your family, hey, I'm going to be busy from 12 to 2. And don't bother me until, or if there's an emergency. And being able to say, hey, this is what I constitute as an emergency. Making sure that you are on the same page. But after we've done that, minimize, or at least share it with those individuals, turn the phone off, and share it with those individuals what we mean by a distraction. After we've turned all that noise off, how often do we find that we are essentially relying on those things? That when those things are turned off, we find ourselves in the way. We find ourselves that we are essentially maybe even the bigger distraction. It's not so much them as it is what we allow. Think about it, guys. Here's my final tip in regards to minimizing those distractions. How we minimize those distractions is about what you receive, meaning what you put in to your mind, what you will read, the decision that you and I will make in regards to what we are purposely allowing into our lives, being television, certain programs. And I'm not necessarily constituting that all programs are bad, but it's essentially about who and what you are connected to. The information that is expelled from moment to moment throughout the course of our lives. Television, the internet, and all these things that we are digesting. So essentially, it becomes what you and I will take in. And if you are taking in the wrong information and it causes or leads you to be distracted, consider what you are digesting. Consider what's essentially on your plate, what you are consuming. And I'm speaking figuratively, but the whole point of it is that it's about what you and I will digest, the information. And it's how we respond to the information. Can we eliminate all distractions? Absolutely not. But we can minimize the distractions. And rest assured, we can exercise our own right to say, that's not going to be a distraction for me anymore. About being honest with ourselves. That issue or that item is not going to be a distraction anymore. And ultimately, it becomes about a peace that we are all deserving of. A peace where the genius comes out of us in the midst of a peace that we create within our own selves. On our next show, we're going to talk about circles of concern. And that's where you get into the peace that you and I have the ability to create in each of our lives. And from that peace, again, comes the circles of concern. And from that place, that space, that's where your genius will come. We're going to talk about that next week. My final tip, I started to say that, but my final tip in regards to minimizing the distractions in your life is through affirmations. It's going to be through the power of affirmations. It only has power unless you give it. Folks, that is so simple. It can only have power unless you give it power. So if you write yourself a affirmation, I've created some affirmations actually, and they will be for sale soon. We're actually in the process of working on those affirmations and a journal that goes along with those affirmations. But as we are wrapping up here, we're actually long of our time here. I just wanted to, again, just give this last point. I think I got distracted maybe, but nevertheless, is affirmations. That's what I use. I use affirmations every single day. I use affirmations. And I mentioned in one of the shows I did several weeks ago about the power of affirmations and how affirmations have worked in the life of my family. I've been using affirmations as a child, and how through affirmations and creating essentially a storyboard about the things I would desire, about the things that our family desires. From those affirmations, we were blessed with a home. So there is power behind what you say. There's power behind what you allow to influence your circle. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. I am over time here, but nevertheless, my name is Curtis Brooks, and this is Entrepreneurship, episode number 16. We've been talking about Are You Distracted? Circles of Influence. On next week, Tuesday, believe it or not, it is going to be our 17th show, episode number 17. We're going to be talking about Are You Distracted? Again, but now, circles of concern. Finding your peace. How about that? That's where you'll find your genius. Again, folks, my name is Curtis Brooks, so we're wrapping it up here. Entrepreneurship, episode number 16. We'll see you on next week, Tuesday. Circles of Concern. We'll see you next week from 11 a.m. to 11:30. Ciao.